Today we are starting a new chapter, that is chemical bonding. Okay, we have already studied that elements, atoms of different elements, they need to achieve stability. And what is stability? Having either 2 electrons in their outermost shell or having 8 electrons in their outermost shell. Atoms of some elements, they get stable by having 2 electrons in their outermost shell, and atoms of some other elements, they most of the atoms or elements, they need to have 8 electrons in their outermost shell to get stable. So how do we define stability? Stability is having a complete outermost shell. Stability क्या होता है? Having a complete outermost shell. Atoms can achieve stability in 2 ways. Some atoms, they get stable with having 2 electrons in their outermost shell. We say they follow a duplet rule. Duplet rule is having two electrons in outermost shell, or outermost shell is also known as valence shell. Duplet rule is followed by only few elements, which includes hydrogen. Hydrogen gets stable by having 2 electrons in its outermost shell. Helium is already stable. It is a noble gas. It already have 2 electrons in its outermost shell and it feels stable. Then we have lithium that gets stable with 2 electrons in its outermost shell. And then beryllium. And in some compound it's boron, जो कि 2 electrons के साथ खुश है. outermost shell में अगर 2 electrons हो जाएं तो वो कहता है I am stable. Right? Rest of the other elements of the periodic table, they get stable by having 8 electrons in their outermost shell. So they follow which rule? Octet rule. Octet is 8. 8 को कहते हैं. All other elements of the periodic table, apart from hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium, and boron, they get stable by having 8 electrons in their outermost shell. Right? Okay. आगे कर दूं? Done writing? Guys, आगे बढ़े. जी.
क्या कोई ऐसा सवाल आ सकता है कि मतलब डुप्लेट रूल क्या होता है या आउटर रूल, या फिर ये मतलब ये डेफिनेशन हमारे सिलेबस में है ही नहीं?
No, he won't ask you the definition of duplet rule or octet rule. Don't worry about it. It's just for your understanding. Yep.
जी सर.
Okay. So in order to achieve stability, atom of any element can do 3 things. What are these 3 things? See, we need to make the basis of this chapter. Na, कि हम why we are studying chemical bonding actually. So when atom of any element, it wants to get stable, it actually loses electrons or gains electron or shares electron. In this process, atoms of different elements, they are chemically combined together. And there are different ways of chemical combination. So that's why we have to study different types of chemical bonding. तो जो basic है chemical bonding होने का जो reason है, वो क्या है? To achieve stability. ठीक है, and how atoms achieve stability or one, either by losing electrons, and when any atom loses electrons, it gets a positive charge or it forms cations. Remember, atomic structure may be studied group 1 element, group 2 elements, group 3 elements, all metal they lose electron to get stable and they form cations, positively charged ions. Similarly, atom also achieve stability by gaining electrons. Like all non-metallic elements, atoms of non-metallic elements, they gain electrons. और उन पे चार्ज क्या आ जाता है, नेगेटिवली चार्ज हो जाते हैं ना, वो एनाइन बना लेते हैं. So they form anion. There is another method by which some non-metals can achieve stability is by sharing electrons. Atoms of different elements or even same elements, they can share their electrons with each other to achieve stability. Okay, and during sharing of electrons, they form a certain type of bond which is known as covalent bond. ठीक है, तो ये एक एक करके पढ़ेंगे सारा. ठीक है, और जब ये इलेक्ट्रॉन लूज या गेन या शेयरिंग करते हैं ना, तो होता है क्या है कि दे हैव टू फॉर्म अ केमिकल बॉन्ड विद ईच अदर. So how atom achieve stability? By doing all these three things. And during achieving stability, they have to form chemical bonds with each other. Hence the name of the chapter, chemical bonding. So if they ask you why, actually they won't ask you, just for your understanding, why atoms of different or same elements form a chemical bond. It is to achieve stability. Right? And how atoms forms chemical bond? There are three types of chemical bonding. तो वो भी हम पढ़ेंगे, टाइप्स ऑफ केमिकल bonding. There are three types of chemical bonding: ionic bonding, second one is covalent bonding, the third one is metallic bonding. Right, so we have to study all these three types of bonding. Okay, so far so good. Anything you need to ask? आगे बढ़े.
Yes, sir.
Sir, what does it mean by atoms of different or same elements?
आवाज आ रही है सबको?
जी सर।
क्या हुआ था?
सर पता नहीं, आपका लोगो नजर आ रहा था, उनको आवाज ही नहीं आ रही थी।
कहाँ तक लिखा आप लोगों ने?
सर
टाइप्स ऑफ
तीनों टाइप की
केमिकल।
बॉन्डिंग बताई थी आपने।
ओके। अच्छा, फिर आगे we were talking that we have to start ionic bonding. And before starting ionic bonding, we have to discuss few things that we know that charges are of two types: positive charge and a negative charge. And there is one law of charges that you will study in detail in physics. But this law states that two like charges can be same charges. Like means same. So two positive charges will always repel each other. They will exert a force of repulsion on each other. It means they will move away from each other. And two negative charges, they will also repel each other. क्योंकि दोनों like charges है ना, same charges है. Like means same charge. And the second statement of this law is two unlike charges. Unlike means opposite charges. Two unlike charges, they always attract each other. Like if we have one positive charge and one negative charge, so they will always exert a force of attraction on each other. And this particular force of attraction has a particular name which is known as electrostatic force of attraction. Right? सही है? क्या नाम है इसका? इलेक्ट्रोस्टैटिक फोर्स ऑफ अट्रैक्शन. स्टैटिक मींस चार्जेस एट रेस्ट. इलेक्ट्रो मींस रिलेटेड टू इलेक्ट्रिसिटी. ये नाम आप फिजिक्स में भी पढ़ोगे बाद में ना, आगे इलेक्ट्रिसिटी में. But for now, you just have to remember that the force of attraction between two unlike charges is known as electrostatic force of attraction. Right? Okay. So now what happens in ionic bonding?
सर एक से ऊपर कर सकते हैं?
जी जी sure.
वेट, मैंने बॉन्डिंग है तो पढ़ लिया था। Disposable.
Ramin, you asking something?
Okay sir, I'm done.
Okay. So ionic bonding always takes place between elements from group 1. If any element from group 1, group 2, or transition element, or group 3. And there are two elements from group 4 which are considered to be metals, which is tin and lead. Right? We must have discussed about it. There are two metals in group 4 as well, tin and lead. If any element from group 1 to transition element group 3 or group 4, all these elements are considered to be metals, right? These all are metals. If any metal or any metallic element makes a bond with any non-metal from group 5, group 6, group 7, then such a bond formed between these elements is known as ion bond. Okay? Or in short, when a metal makes a bond with a non-metal, such a bond is known as ionic bond. Okay, so they form ionic bond. अब बनता कैसे ionic bond? Let's say if we have sodium, which is a metal from group 1, and chlorine, which is a non-metal from group 7. Electronic configuration for sodium is 2, 8, 1. In order to get stable, sodium loses one electron to form the electronic configuration of 2, 8, whereas chlorine has an atomic number of 17. Its electronic configuration is 2, 8, 7. Chlorine has 7 valence electrons. It needs one more electron to get stable, right? ऐसा ही है ना? Because it already has 7 valence electrons. It need one more electron to complete its octet. वो electron जो sodium lose कर रहा है, it will be gained by a chlorine atom to form a chloride ion. Chlorine atom will gain this electron and it will form a chloride ion. Right? So sodium atom forms sodium ion which is positively charged, and chlorine atom will gain the electron lost by sodium to form a chloride ion which is negatively charged. As both forms oppositely charged ions, these two ions will be attracted to each other, and this force of attraction is known as force of attraction between two unlike charges. We just discussed it in the previous slide. Force of attraction between two unlike charges is known as electrostatic force of attraction.
Sir,
And when they जी बच्चे
sir, is it important that like ionic bonds they only form between metals and non-metals?
it is not, cannot say it is important, it is only possible between metals and non-metals. It will only happen between those elements or among which one of the element have to lose electrons and the atom of the other element have to gain electron. So one can form a positively charged ion, the other can form a negatively charged ion. So formation of oppositely charged ion is important. Otherwise, ionic bonding cannot take place. The word ionic bonding has ion into it. It means we have to form ions first.
Okay,
And
sir,
oppositely
thank you.
charged ions are required for ionic bonding. So when sodium atom loses electron, it forms a positively charged ion, and when chlorine atom gains that electron, it forms a negatively charged ion. Sodium ion is a positively charged ion, chloride ion is a negatively charged ion. Both are oppositely charged ions, so they will attract each other. And the force of attraction would be called as electrostatic force of attraction, and they will stick together. ठीक है? और stick together को chemistry में हम कहते हैं chemical bond. When atoms of different elements or same elements, when they stick together somehow, then that formation we call it as a chemical bond. Okay? And when oppositely charged ions they are attracted to each other, then the bond formed between these ions is known as ionic bond. तो सोडियम आयन और क्लोराइड आयन के बीच में जो बॉन्ड बना है, दिस बॉन्ड इज नोन एज ionic bond. So what happens in ionic bonding? Actually, one atom loses electron, the other atom gains an electron. So there is actually a transfer of electron. ट्रांसफर ही कहेंगे ना इसको. सोडियम एटम का इलेक्ट्रॉन निकल के क्लोरीन में चला गया. देयर इज एक्चुअली अ ट्रांसफर ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉन्स एंड फॉर्मेशन ऑफ अ पॉजिटिव आयन एंड अ नेगेटिव आयन. ट्रांसफर ऑफ इलेक्ट्रॉन्स, एक तो ट्रांसफर हुआ इलेक्ट्रॉन्स का, एंड फॉर्मेशन ऑफ a positive ion and negatively ion. So we can say a formation of oppositely charged ions which are attracted to each other by which force of attraction? Electrostatic force of attraction. ये डेफिनेशन बन जाएगी आयनिक बॉन्डिंग की.
सर इसके
जी
लिए हमें
बच्चे बोलो.
सर इसके लिए हमें इलेक्ट्रिक कॉन्फ़िगरेशन याद करनी पड़ेगी ना?
नहीं, you should know how to make the electronic configuration. There is no need to learn electronic configuration ना.
हम सर लेकिन टाइम हमारा बच
बना
जाएगा अगर हम
लेते हैं ना
याद कर लें.
खुद ही, याद नहीं करनी है. नहीं, बनाने
सर
की
हमारा
जरूरत नहीं पड़ेगी. अभी तो हमने स्टार्ट किया है ना. When we have to make an ionic bond, तो never need to make an ionic electronic configuration.
Okay, sir.
Sir,
सही है, यही पूछो, कुछ और पूछना चाह रहे हो?
सर यही पूछ रहे थे.
अभी जो स्टार्ट हुआ है ना, it will take time. Obviously we will discuss the questions with it, तो समझ आ जाएगा कि क्या बनाना है, क्या याद करना है, क्या नहीं करना पड़ेगा. जी बच्चे.
sir,
हिबा?
sir, is it important that we have to do it in the same way? Can you draw diagrams?
It depends on the question. If the question is asking you to draw a dot and cross
So-
diagram for ionic bonding, then of course it is important.
For example, if it's not mentioned, so then it's our choice, right?
If it is not mentioned, then it's up to you. But usually it is always mentioned. वो कुछ और question होता है फिर. It is usually mentioned.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
चलो. So let's define ionic bonding. The ionic bonding, it is a bond formed due to transfer of electrons and formation of oppositely charged ions attracted to each other by electrostatic force of attraction. It is a bond formed due to transfer of electrons and formation of oppositely charged ions attracted to each other by electrostatic force of attraction.
सर कोई चैट में क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे.
Well, as per syllabus requirement, they can ask you the definition of ionic bonding, but it's been too long. They haven't asked the definition of ionic bonding. I think it's been 4, 5, I think 10 years. में अभी तक ionic bonding की definition पूछी भी नहीं है. But they can ask you the definition.
Sir,
देखो
तो इस topic में
definition.
से
इस टॉपिक में से
Sir-
क्या पूछते हैं?
सर मैं कह रही हूँ अगर डेफिनेशन नहीं आती तो इस टॉपिक में से मेनली आता क्या है?
Dot and cross diagram for ionic bonding. You have to identify whether the compound is ionic or not, and properties of ionic compounds. Usually they ask you about the properties of ionic compounds. It's just the start of the topic ना. In fact, देखो, I make you write many things just for your understanding, ताकि चीजें समझ आए. अब याद करने वाली जो चीज होती है ना, वो मैं खुद बता देता हूँ कि उसके साथ में मार्क्स लिख देता हूँ ना अक्सर. They ask you for 3 marks, they ask you for 2 marks, and then we do the past papers after the chapter. अब इसके चैप्टर के पास पेपर्स तो हम साथ साथ स्टार्ट कर देंगे. आयनिक बॉन्डिंग पढ़ के उसके कुछ क्वेश्चंस करेंगे. So when you do the past paper, you realize what sort of questions they ask. Okay, so usually they do not ask the definitions, they do not ask you about the stability, they do not ask you about duplet or octet rule. Those were just for your understanding. ठीक है, वो लिख लें ताकि रिवाइज करें तो आपका कॉन्सेप्ट रिवाइव हो जाए. Got it?
जी सर.
Sir,
अच्छा.
but हम सर आइसोटोप्स की इन्होंने डेफिनेशन सेवरल बार सुनी।
आइसोटोप्स की तो पूछता है, बहुत बार पूछता है। चलें, अच्छा, अब देखो, आयनिक बॉन्डिंग टेक्स प्लेस between elements if any element from group 1, group 2, transition element, group 3, and tin or lead from group 4, if they makes a bond with any of the element from group 5, group 6, and group 7, then such a bond formed is known as ionic bond. The metals, they loses electron to form cations or positively charged ions, and non-metals, they gain their electron to form anions or negatively charged ions. And then they are attracted to each other and they form a bond which is known as ionic bond. The bonding is known as ionic bonding. For example, first of all, you have to identify whether the compound given is an ionic compound or not. See, sodium chloride. So how would you identify that whether the sodium chloride is ionic compound or not? Because sodium is from group 1, right? And chlorine is from group 7. So sodium is from this family, metal hai, and chlorine is from group 7 from this family, जो कि non-metal है. So together they will make an ionic bond. So the sodium chloride is an ionic compound. Then you have to develop the formula of sodium chloride. We studied formula making before. इसलिए तो पढ़ा था formula making. How would you make the formula of sodium chloride? Sodium as a symbol Na, as it is from group 1, so it will get a charge of +1. Chloride is from chlorine, right? And it is from group 7, so it forms a charge of -1. Now we cannot further simplify 1 and 1 of sodium. So the one with sodium ion, we will drop the charges को वहीं छोड़ देंगे, and we will bring the number into the subscript of chlorine. Similarly, charge over the chlorine will come under the subscript of sodium. So this formula would be Na1Cl1. And we discussed that in the chemical formula, we do not have to write 1. If nothing is written, by default, it means it's 1. So the formula of sodium chloride would be NaCl. So one sodium ion and one chloride ion, they combine together to form sodium chloride. And what actually is happening, if we see the structure of these atoms, the sodium atom has 11 electrons, 2, 8, 1. This is sodium atom. And it has how many shells? 3 shells. First shell में it has 2 electrons. Sodium के electron हम dot से बना रहे हैं. Second shell it has 8 electrons. Second shell के electrons हम pairs में बनाते हैं ना, दो के. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the in last shell or outermost shell or the valence shell, it has 1 electron. But sodium right now is not stable because it has 1 electron in its valence shell. Chlorine, on the other hand, has an atomic number of 17. It means it has 17 electrons. The electronic configuration or electronic structure is 2, 8, 7. तो क्लोरीन के पास भी 3 नंबर ऑफ शेल्स हैं. अच्छा, क्लोरीन के इलेक्ट्रॉन हम क्रॉस से बनाएंगे. तो फर्स्ट शेल हैज 2 electrons. Second shell has 8 electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the last shell of chlorine has 7 electrons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So both of these atoms are not stable. What happens then? Sodium, in order to get stable, it loses its 1 electron from its valence shell. ये जो आखिरी वाला इलेक्ट्रॉन है, और ये इलेक्ट्रॉन जाके क्लोरीन गेन कर लेगा. तो सोडियम भी स्टेबल हो जाएगा, क्लोरीन भी स्टेबल हो जाएगा. बट इन डूइंग दिस प्रोसेस, सोडियम विल फॉर्म sodium +1 ion and chlorine will form Cl negative ion. देखो क्या होगा.
सर सिंपल वर्ड्स में यही है ना कि जो है किसी भी चीज को स्टेबल होने के लिए जितने इलेक्ट्रॉन्स होंगे तो फिर हम लोग आयनिक बॉन्डिंग।
स्टेबल होने के लिए वैलेंस शेल में मेटल के जितने इलेक्ट्रॉन होते हैं वो सबके सब लूज कर देता है, नॉन मेटल को जितने रिक्वायर्ड होते हैं वो उतने ही गेन करता है. In this particular example, chlorine only requires one electron in its valence shell, so it will only gain one electron. Doesn't matter. अच्छा, ये आगे पढ़ते हैं, अभी एग्जाम्पल में आएगा, जब आप क्वेश्चन पूछ रहे हो ना वो आएगा, तो जब ज्यादा अभी स्टेप बाय स्टेप चलते हैं वो आ जाएगी बात समझ. This is 2,8. After losing one electron, sodium will get a charge of +1, and its one outermost shell which had one electron is no more. है ना, वो इलेक्ट्रॉन ही खत्म हो गया ना. Now sodium is left with two shells only, and now it is not a sodium atom. This is sodium ion. It has a charge of +1, right? अच्छा, ये जो इलेक्ट्रॉन सोडियम ने लूज करा है, ये इलेक्ट्रॉन कहाँ गया? क्लोरीन के पास गया. So chlorine atom will gain this electron because it required one electron in its outermost shell. क्लोरीन ने इसको गेन कर लेना है. सोडियम का इलेक्ट्रॉन डॉट से शो किया था ना, तो जो इलेक्ट्रॉन सोडियम का क्लोरीन के वैलेंस शेल में आया वो हम डॉट से शो करेंगे. Chlorine is gaining one electron, so its electronic structure would become 2,8,8, and it will get a charge of -1. And it will show negative charge over chlorine ion like this. It's -1. Sodium +1 है, chlorine negative है, तो they will attract each other and they will stick to each other. So that's how we show ionic bonding between sodium chloride. और इस डायग्राम को हम कहते हैं डॉट एंड क्रॉस डायग्राम ऑफ सोडियम क्लोराइड. तो हम क्या कहेंगे? दिस इज अ डॉट. Why dot and cross? Because electrons of one of the atom is shown by the dot and the electrons of the other atom is shown by cross. So this diagram is known as dot and cross diagram of sodium chloride. जी, पूछ रहे हो कुछ अंजला?
थोड़ा कॉपी करने
नहीं
का
सर.
टाइम देते हैं इस डायग्राम को कॉपी करने.
हसन थोड़ा लाउड बोला आवाज.
सर
सर
आप
थोड़ा सा
थोड़ा
ऊपर
स्क्रॉल
कर
कर दें.
बच्चे एक एक करके बोलोगे तो समझ आएगा. पहले किसका माइक खुला हुआ है? अरे हंजला, यू आर आस्किंग समथिंग. पहले हंजला आप क्वेश्चन
नहीं
पूछ
सर,
रहे
मैंने पूछा था, गलती से माइक खुला रह गया था मेरा. सर मैंने अभी ज्वाइन करा है ना, क्योंकि मेरा डिस्कनेक्ट हो गया था.
हो. ओके, और अभी दूसरा क्वेश्चन कौन पूछ रहा था?
सर आप थोड़ा सा ऊपर
सर
स्क्रॉल कर सकते हैं.
हसन, यू आर आस्किंग सम क्वेश्चन.
यस सर सर बोल रहा हूँ आप थोड़ा टाइम देते कॉपी करने.
अच्छा, नोट डाउन करने का टाइम दे दूं. श्योर श्योर, देख लो, ले लो.
थैंक यू.
डन.
सर
जी बच्चे.
सर जो सॉलिड और लिक्विड्स में होते हैं पार्टिकल्स, राइट? तो उसके उनके जो दरमियान में फोर्स होती है वो भी इलेक्ट्रोस्टैटिक फोर्स होती है, राइट? जो उनको होल्ड कर रही होती है.
यस. Every
So-
force of attraction in chemistry is due to charges, oppositely charged ions. तो वो सारी electrostatic ही होती हैं, लेकिन उनको हमने name categorize किए हुए हैं. For example, ionic compounds में we call this force of attraction ionic bond. Covalent bonding में we will call it covalent bond. Metallic bonding में we will call it a metallic bond. And what you are talking about is a force of attraction between particles in solid. I think you are referring to van der Waals forces. Again, van der Waals forces are also electrostatic forces of attraction. So every force of attraction in chemistry is electrostatic due to unlike charges.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. चलें आगे. हसन हो गया.
Sir, only 1 minute, sir.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thanks.
Done. Okay. Moving on.
सर हम लोग एक और एग्जाम्पल करेंगे फिर
हम लोग बच्चे बहुत सारी करेंगे. अभी तो स्टार्ट किया है. Now we are doing magnesium chloride. So in order to make a dot and cross diagram of magnesium chloride, the question is draw a dot and cross diagram of a dot and cross diagram to show ionic bonding between magnesium chloride. Okay. So first step, in order to make a dot and cross diagram, you always have to make a chemical formula. Formula making में पढ़ा है ना? Always make a chemical formula. Do not start making a dot and cross diagram without a chemical formula of an ionic compound. If it is already given in the question, that's good. It is usually given in the question. But if it is not given, then you have to make a chemical formula of an ionic compound. This is your first step. So how would you make the chemical formula of magnesium chloride? Magnesium is from group 2. So it forms a charge of 2 positive ions. And we are sure that magnesium chloride is an ionic compound. Reason being because we already discussed that if any of the element from group 1, group 2, transition element or group 3 makes a bond with any of the element from group 5, group 6 or group 7, then such a bond is a ionic bond. So magnesium is from group 2 and chlorine is from group 7. Magnesium forms a charge of 2 positive and chloride comes from chlorine, right? And it is from group 7. So it forms a charge of -1. So the formula of the magnesium chloride would be the 2 over magnesium would go under the subscript of chlorine and 1 over chloride ion will go under the subscript of magnesium. That's what we learned for magnesium chloride, right? So this is MgCl2. Now, if we see the electronic structure of magnesium, magnesium has an atomic number of 12. Its electronic configuration is 2,8,2. Chlorine has an atomic structure of 17. It's 2,8,7. Magnesium atom has 3 shells, right? And chlorine atom also has 3 shells. आगे पीछे बन रहा है बस। अच्छा, मैग्नीशियम के इलेक्ट्रॉन हम डॉट से शो कर देते हैं। 1 2, सेकंड शेल में 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, लास्ट शेल हैज 2 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स। क्लोरीन के इलेक्ट्रॉन हम क्रॉस से शो कर रहे हैं। 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8, and the last shell or the valence shell of chlorine has 7 electrons. Now magnesium atom, in order to get stable, magnesium has to lose how many electrons? 2 electrons. That is fixed for magnesium. Magnesium अगर स्टेबल होगा तो वो 2 इलेक्ट्रॉन तो लूज करेगा, और उसके outer most shell में there are 2 electrons, and it will lose those 2 electrons, and it will be left with only 2 shells. और जो उसका सेकंड लास्ट शेल था वो अब उसका आउटर मोस्ट शेल बन गया, राइट? और उसमें 8 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स होंगे, और उस पर चार्ज क्या आ जाएगा? 2 पॉजिटिव। However, chlorine atom only needs 1 electron in its valence shell. देखो मैग्नीशियम से, although magnesium atom has lost 2 electrons, लेकिन क्लोरीन एटम जो है वो सिर्फ 1 इलेक्ट्रॉन गेन कर सकता है, एक से ज्यादा थोड़ी ना करेगा। वो 1 इलेक्ट्रॉन तो चला जाएगा एक क्लोरीन एटम के पास, दूसरा इलेक्ट्रॉन दूसरे क्लोरीन एटम के पास चला जाएगा, बिकॉज इन द फॉर्मूला ऑफ MgCl2 वी हैव 2 chlorine atoms, not 2 chloride ions. So for 1 magnesium ion we need how many chloride ions? We need 2 chloride ions. देखो तो क्लोरीन एटम ना ऐसे बेसिकली 2 होंगे। One of the electron will go to 1 chlorine atom, the other electron will go to the other chlorine atom. समझ आई ये बात?
सर जब हम डायग्राम बनाएंगे तो क्लोरीन, दोनों क्लोरीन को हम एक साथ रख सकते हैं?
रख सकते हो, और आप दोनों अलग अलग भी बना सकते हो, दोनों एक साथ बना के सिर्फ एक बना के उसके साथ 2 भी लिख सकते हो। So the best way is to just make 1 chlorine atom and write 2 before it. Let me show you how. 1 chlorine atom can only gain 1 electron. अगर मैग्नीशियम 2 लूज कर रहा है तो उसका मतलब ये नहीं कि क्लोरीन बेचारा उसके दोनों इलेक्ट्रॉन गेन कर लेगा। क्लोरीन कैन नॉट गेन मोर देन 1 electron because it already has 7 valence electrons, right? It just need 1 more electron in its shell. उसके पास उसकी जगह ही नहीं है ना। लेकिन ऐसे कितने क्लोरीन एटम है? 2 है, तो यू विल राइट 2 before chloride ion. This will show for 1 magnesium ion you need 2 chloride ion, and you do not have to think about it. The chemical formula will show it. Now chemical formula for magnesium chloride that you have formed is MgCl2. This shows there is 1 magnesium ion and 2 chloride ion. वो तो फॉर्मूला बता देगा आपको, you do not have to worry about it. कुछ बच्चे गलती ये करते हैं कि Cl-1 की जगह Cl-2 लिख देते हैं, कहते हैं मैग्नीशियम ने 2 इलेक्ट्रॉन लूज किए तो क्लोरीन भी 2 गेन कर लेगा। नहीं कर सकता। 7 में, ग्रुप 7 में 7 वैलेंस इलेक्ट्रॉन्स है, जगह ही एक है उसके पास।
क्योंकि सर स्टेबल होने के लिए सिर्फ 8 चाहिए होते हैं, 8 से ज्यादा नहीं चाहिए होते। अगर 2 करेगा तो वो 9
ले ही नहीं सकता, ले ही नहीं सकता 1 से ज्यादा।
सर अगर 3 गेन करेगा तो 3
हाँ, अगर MgCl3 होता तो फिर मैं क्लोरीन के साथ 3 लिखता। अभी हम बहुत सारे एग्जांपल्स और करेंगे नेक्स्ट क्लास में। मैं होमवर्क नहीं दे रहा आपको इसका, मैं खुद करवाऊंगा, वीकेंड पे होमवर्क दूंगा।
सर सर आप
जी,
कोई
वाह।
ऐसे एग्जांपल दे सकते हैं, लाइक कोई एक एटम है जिसके आउटर मोस्ट इलेक्ट्रॉन में लाइक 3 इलेक्ट्रॉन्स है, और वो तीनों इलेक्ट्रॉन बाकी किसी 3 और एटम्स को देने हैं, ऐसे
जी,
कोई एग्जांपल
ऐसे
है?
है। यस, एल्यूमिनियम नाइट्राइड make ionic bonding for aluminum nitride. Nitrogen atom needs 3 electrons because it has 5 valence electrons. Group 5 का है ना. Aluminium is from group 3. It has 3 valence electrons. So it will lose all these 3 electrons, and one nitrogen atom will gain all of these 3 electrons. ये मैं करवाऊंगा नेक्स्ट क्लास में.
ओके
ये
सर,
अभी
थैंक यू।
अराउंड 6 to 7 डॉट एंड क्रॉस डायग्राम मैं खुद बनवाऊंगा आपको. फिर 10 to 15 डायग्राम्स आपको होमवर्क में मिलेंगी.
ओके
Okay, we have just started studying ionic bonding. We'll practice it a lot. Don't worry. ठीक है. तो अच्छा, आप आज की क्लास में अगर कोई न्यू स्टूडेंट है तो प्लीज मुझे मैसेज कर देना आफ्टर क्लास. आई विल शेयर विथ यू द रिकॉर्डेड लेक्चर्स ऑफ प्रीवियस क्लासेस. मुझे मैसेज कर देना बस एक बार. ठीक है,
सर
अभी आप जा सकते हैं. थैंक यू सो मच. जी बा.
सर आप प्लीज ड्राइव की लिंक सेंड कर दीजिए, मुझे ड्राइव की लिंक नहीं मिली।
मैं ग्रुप पे दोबारा भेज देता हूँ, सारे ग्रुप पे भेज देता हूँ. ओके.
थैंक यू सर।
ओके सर.